I walk a straight line, shackled and chained. Oh, gruesome Gertie is calling my name. There is no mercy in this penitentiary. Just ask the Hillstring Gang, or Angola 3. I'm here for life, I'm here to die. Inside these walls, inside the wire. And when the wolf cries, I know it's over. Oh, bloody Angola. Oh, bloody Angola.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Bloody Angola, a podcast 142 years in the making, the complete story of America's bloodiest prison. I'm Jim Chapman, and it is Thanksgiving week, so I hope, first of all, that you're spending some time with family and friends, and you're thinking about all the things that you're thankful for. I, of course, am very thankful for all of you. Couldn't do this podcast without you. And I thought it would be fitting today to bring you some prison stories as it relates to Thanksgiving. A lot of people ask me, how do convicts spend the holidays inside, behind bars? And so I scoured the internet. I came up with several interesting articles. So I'm going to give you a look inside of a prison right now and how these convicts celebrate it. And I'm going to start off with one from the Prison Journal. And it's titled, Why My First Thanksgiving in Prison Was the Best One I Had in Forever. And this is written by an actual inmate. Starts off, between being sober, getting a visit, and having a surprise feast with the mean girls in my unit, I still cherish the day. Thanksgiving was not the worst holiday in prison, but looking back, I think maybe it was the saddest. Behind bars, the best holidays were usually the ones that have been the least exciting in the free world. Things like Labor Day, Memorial Day, and Sunday. These were times when we didn't miss our family as much, when it didn't feel like an entire season of celebration was continuing without us. Still, in a sense, my first Thanksgiving in custody was better than the ones before it, when I had been addicted to heroin and selling drugs to feed my habit. Back then, most of the holidays were a druggy blur, save for the occasional near disaster, like a year a housemate got chased down the street with a baseball bat and had to spend the rest of the day in hiding because he urinated on another guy's coke stash. I was too high to be bothered by it at the time. It was just another crazy drug story. But if I had been sober enough, it might have seemed sad and lonely. A few years later, I got arrested with a Tupperware full of heroin, and I was stone cold sober for my first Thanksgiving in prison. That was in 2011, a few months after a judge sentenced me to 2.5 years behind bars for felony drug possession. In the New York prison, where I did a lot of my time, we lived in dorms that looked like warehouses. It was always cold in the winter and the heat was never high enough. On weekends and holidays, they only fed us twice a day, lumping breakfast and lunch together with meals never particularly worth eating. But on Thanksgiving, I skipped the mess hall. I was lucky. I had a visitor. The person I was dating had driven 2.5 hours to go to the Alboyne Correctional Facility's tedious screening process and sit across from me at a beat-up table in a noisy visiting room. We didn't have our families around, and we were surrounded by prisoners in green and officers in blue. Our celebration was pitiful, but we had each other. First, we played Scrabble, as per usual. Then we enjoyed one of the major perks of visitation, snacks from the visiting machine. We used up all our quarters on soda and candy. Then we took a paper clip and carved the words turkey on the Snickers and Reese's. We called it our holiday meal. Then I went back to my dorm. At that point, I lived in an absolutely awful unit. Everyone hated each other, and my bunkie had it out for me. There were thieves who would steal your toilet paper, and there were fights in the bathroom. It seemed like we all had a creepy and mean officer assigned to us, the one who would watch us change and hand out disciplinary tickets like candy and send people to solitary for things like wearing pajamas in the daytime. But that Thanksgiving, we had one good officer. He came in and spotted a few women hogging the hot plates in the day room, making food only for the people they liked. And he issued an order. Quote, "It's Thanksgiving. If you're cooking for the whole damn unit." So they did. We all got together and donated commissary items. I lived on canned peas, so I pitched in some of those. Other people showed up with instant mashed potatoes, rice, beans, and dry pasta. They cooked all day, and everyone with any culinary inclination pitched in. Supplies were limited. Most spices weren't allowed, but some people had already bought them on the prison's black market. Now, despite the lack of tools and the hodgepodge of ingredients, the result was amazing. Pasta, salad, spiced cabbage, rice, yams, turkey, cranberry sauce, green beans, mac and cheese, and 10 or 15 different kinds of cakes and pies. Most of it was a little orange because Saison, the number one spice in prison, is orange, but it tasted so good, no one fought. Now, this is what I think of when I think of redemption. It was only one day, and then everything went back to how it was. But this is how change happens, one day at a time. People learn about the kindness and hope and change through individual moments that eventually add up to a different person. Those moments felt so scarce behind bars. That's why this Thanksgiving makes me so sad. I think of all the people in prison, living with the pandemic, the lockdowns, and the months of closed rec yards and day rooms and visiting rooms. Some facilities have restarted visitation and are trying to get back to normal. Y'all, incidentally, this was written, if you can't tell, during the pandemic. But many aren't there yet, and either way, crowding around a hot plate to cook a buffet meal is not safe anymore. People behind bars will not witness the fleeting scene of redemption I saw almost 10 years ago. The year 2020 had made prison holidays even sadder. This week, I messaged a man in solitary confinement. He communicates with his family and friends on the outside through a contraband phone. For him, pandemics and lockdowns do not make much difference. This holiday season, he said, the mood is much the same as in years past. It's always desperation. That's not to say he won't celebrate. He will. Last year, he had a cellmate, and together they made tacos and drank smuggled in gin. This year, he's hoping to swap out gin for something a little more efficient like Everclear. I don't know how efficient that is. And to figure out a way to feed his whole pod. Whether they are indigent or not, whatever prison magic he pulls off, he will celebrate it alone in his cell, in a lockup, ravaged by coronavirus. And if he wants to witness any redemption, he will have to supply it for himself. I know this year is harder for some of us as we cancel Friendsgivings and weigh the risk of going home against the sadness of staying put. It's harder to remember what we're grateful for now, and it's hard to see the light in such dark times. Personally, I have not handled this year's isolation well. Even in a good year, I'm not an optimist. Still, when I think back to Thanksgiving's past, it's so much easier to be grateful that I am not where I was, that I am out now and working an amazing job where I can tell the stories of people who are still on the inside, plotting to score some Everclear, carving turkey on their Snickers, and counting down the days to freedom. That was his story. And obviously, as I said, that was during the pandemic. So an interesting view at what the pandemic was like during the holidays. I'm going to tell you another one also from the Prison Journal. It says the holidays in prison are depressing, and most, if not all of us, wish it would just hurry up and pass. Mail, which is very important for prisoners, is delayed and programs are canceled, which leaves little to do. Prisons are short-staffed, and those who are working are disgruntled, and they take it out on the prisoners. And maybe the worst torture is that the same tired reruns on TV remind us we are away from our family. And that's something also to keep in mind is the COs are working during the holidays too. They're in there with the prisoners and they ain't happy about it a lot of times when it's during the holidays, as you can understand. It goes on to say, I was born on Thanksgiving. My family would gather at my grandparents' farm. I remember Grandma in the grand kitchen, cooking, baking, and fluttering around, creating memorable smells. Grandpa would greet everyone at the door with cheer. He entertained us with grand stories and bad jokes. Love the way this guy writes. He played games with us in the basement, and when he would get up, he would say, I should put another log on the fire. And we all shouted, no. He was a bit of a pyromaniac. I've spent almost 18 Thanksgivings in 9 different prisons. Prior to Correctional Industries, that's CI, taking over food services, we look forward to a homemade brunch of chocolate chip pancakes, waffles, sausage, scrambled eggs, chocolate milk. Dinner used to be a large baked turkey leg, homemade stuffing, cranberries, yam, pecan pie, ice cream, and a treat bag. After CI took over, the brunch was replaced with our usual tasteless, unhealthy breakfast consisting of 4 slices of bread, frozen peanut butter, and flavored corn syrup packets, a brownie, and chips for lunch to eat in our cells. Dinner was a slice of processed turkey, stuffing, overcooked vegetables, and heated whole yam. Maybe cranberry sauce, maybe, frozen pumpkin pie with no ice cream, and the usual rotting fruit. And if you're curious, CI, that is like a giant supplier to prisons of food. So it's, you know, a lot of these prisons, they're not like Angola. They don't cook everything right there on site. They order out, if you will, and it's not, as you can see here, the most tasty of food. And it goes on, this letter, to say, but there are some positives. It's one of the few times that we set aside prison politics to watch a game or play cards together. I call my family in the early morning because I know it's harder to get to the phone and it gets louder later in the day. Although there is no lending, trading, borrowing, or giving allowed, the guards usually look the other way as we make and share our spread of prison cuisine. Different groups get together and make their spreads, which are usually nachos or top ramen burritos. Others line a table with a trash bag and turn it into a community nacho spread for the entire pod. Airway Heights was probably the most creative. In the morning, a group who had the money would make omelets with powdered eggs, French toast, pancakes made from instant potatoes, and bacon strips for everyone. Afternoon or evening meals would consist of various different takes on the standard burrito or nachos. Cold burritos made with shredded beef, cream cheese, lettuce, and sometimes tomatoes if available, and nachos with chili, beef crumbles, squeeze, and block cheeses in a mix of various different chips. With the pandemic, there was little trading of various Thanksgiving dishes because we had to eat in our cells. There were no special spreads. We were mostly locked down. We hope this year will be more relaxed and all the working staff will have been vaccinated. I think everyone is tired of hearing about COVID-19. The supply chain issue has already affected the commissary, which is continuously out of staples like beans, rice, cheese, and even popcorn. It's hard to tell what Thanksgiving meal will be this year. Still, I can be thankful that I probably won't be in the hole this year as I stop filing grievances and lawsuits against the prison staff. I have Turner Classic Movies on my cable package. Although they are all reruns, they are old enough that I probably have not seen them yet. The Prison Journalism Project has also made me feel like I am contributing to society, and hopefully I will be part of fixing a broken system. And that was his letter, and both letters there gave you kind of a eye of what the pandemic looked like to these prisoners. And we'll move on to a article from Newsweek. Thanksgiving in prison is a beggar's feast. This Thanksgiving, I will enjoy roasted turkey surrounded by squabbling family members for the first time since 2002. I have a lot to be thankful for. For the past 11 Thanksgiving afternoons, I had just minutes to eat slimy turkey roll off a plastic tray. Gross. Rushed along by guards eager to get home for their holiday meal, Thanksgiving in prison was a meal that implied I deserved no better. I was arrested in November of 2003 for 5 charges of armed robbery. I had graduated from New York University in the year 2000 and begun a career in publishing. But I also dabbled in drugs, and after 2 years of a heroin addiction, I had a $100 a day habit and owed my violent Ukrainian dealer $5,000. Using the same pocket knife I once took camping as a boy, I turned to robbery. Luckily, no one was hurt, and the newspapers dubbed me the Apologetic Bandit for the apologies I expressed to my victims. Nevertheless, a judge gave me 12 years. I was released in February, and having paid dearly for my crime, finally have a turkey breast and feuding uncles in sight. New York State calls its jails correctional facilities. The goals of improving prisoners includes eventually returning them to society. But many convicts have never fit well in the conventional world to begin with. Some have not had the experiences a civilian takes for granted, whether it's fishing, summer jobs, going to high school, flying on airplanes, or even having parents. I learned the telltale signs of a group home youth in prison mess halls. The guys who wouldn't touch the vegetables had been raised without parents to teach them to eat greens. On Thanksgiving, the clue was the stuffing. Men who had graduated from state care to prison never ate it. They didn't know what stuffing was and were not prepared to risk trying it. In their lives, most surprises have been bad news. Without alcohol or the opposite sex, all celebration in jail is done through the alimentary canal. 4 holidays are marked with special food: turkey on Thanksgiving, fried chicken on 4th of July, chicken breast on New Year's Eve, and roast beef on Christmas. Lesser holidays like Columbus Day, Memorial Day, and Labor Day call for 2 hamburgers and 2 hot dogs. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday isn't on Albany's calendar, while St. Patrick's Day is commemorated with corned beef, despite not being a national holiday. Introducing those from the margins of society to the shared national culture they preyed on is a good reason to celebrate Thanksgiving in prison. But doling out turkey to 57,000 prisoners is expensive. Real meat in New York prisons was phased out 20 years ago, along with higher education programs. For the most part, soy substitute satisfies the nutritional requirement for protein, although a weekly chicken leg survived the budget cuts. The Thanksgiving solution is to serve the cheapest substitute they can still pass for turkey. Wow. The regular Thanksgiving dinner is 3 slices of turkey roll, a log of something white and speckled with the occasional beak or bone. Oh, man. There's also stuffing, cranberry jellies, and carrots. The meal is early. By 5 o'clock, the prisoners are locked in their units by a skeleton crew. The rest of the staff is at home celebrating with real turkey. Holidays are approached with ambiguity in prison. The administration appears to encourage inmates to celebrate them. The staff resist. I once spent Christmas in the special housing unit. It's a prison on the Canadian border comprised entirely of solitary confinement cells. And it was as far from New York City and my family as it is possible to be while remaining in New York State. Not a very correctional setting. Just as grass grows through the grass of the pavement, inmates celebrate despite their limitations. They are not consciously asserting themselves as human beings who deserve to participate in our society's holidays. They just know it's a jailhouse tradition to cook big on Thanksgiving. Prison culture is short on meaningful dates, although convicts in New York State memorialize September 13th by going to the mess hall but not eating the food. That's how they commemorate the Attica riots, which began on that day in 1971. Young prisoners are taught this and all other customs by older ones. And they also learn to save their food and money for Thanksgiving to make the biggest meal of the year. After the trays of turkey roll are served at 4 in the afternoon, the prisoners return to their dorms or cell blocks, where the cooking has been going on since early morning. With only a few stoves and pans and microwaves available, every hour of the day is required, especially since 3 feasts are being prepared. There are 3 chefs and their assistants. 3 long tables are set up in the common rooms, using every card table and cardboard box available, and homogenized in appearance with white sheets that serve as tablecloths. Plastic trash bags keep the flies off the food. There will be 3 batches of mac and cheese, 3 pitchers of Kool-Aid, The incarcerated population can be divided into three main groups: whites, blacks, and Hispanics, and each of the three tables is for men of each race. Since the state of race relations in prison is about where the nation was in 1948, whites, blacks, and Hispanics eat separately. When the real enemy appears, as it did in Attica, the men unite, but in everyday life, segregation remains the rule. The gravity of breaking bread with a man is understood with an almost biblical earnestness, so the races do not share foods. Men usually live in trios of cooking squads so that the business of procurement, preparation, and cleanup can be delegated. These teams are almost always uniracial. I was firmly told that if I cooked with African Americans or Hispanics, I could not return to the whites table. However, on Thanksgiving, many rivalries are put aside to share specialties like the curry powder Jamaicans smuggle in, or the Latinos' method of boiling an unopened can of condensed milk to make dulce de leche, and I'm sure someone knows how to pronounce that better than me. There is also a friendly competition between the races to have the most elaborate meal. As bellies fill, the men soften and often break their usual rules and racial barriers by sending samples from table to table. The whites spend most of the money by ordering smoked meats from a company specializing in selling hams and turkey breasts to inmates. The mail-order business was rumored to be run by correctional officers, and this was the reason given by many who would not order from them. Latinos were deemed the finest cooks. They knew their way around the spices, though their devotion to garlic sometimes killed the vampires in our sealed dorms. The black table always had the most food. Within their community, the dilemma was pork. Prisoners with nothing to contribute would buy a place at the table by doing dishes or just waiting until the others finish for leftovers. No one goes without, and the rest of the week is devoted to polishing off leftovers. Without access to refrigerators, the men can eat quickly. Prisoners are not wealthy. I live on $100 a month, and I was in the 1%. These elaborate Thanksgiving meals bankrupt many inmates, but the men are willing to spend half a year's accumulated state pay on food for this day, only to give away much of it. It's not rational, but when has rational ever been in prison? Just as the state makes its point with disgusting and dispiriting turkey logs, the prisoners make their own in excess. Being locked away from family and friends hurts a little more on the holidays. Hardened convicts can still be susceptible to pain of loss. An acquaintance of mine once went out to the row of phones in the yard to call his wife, learned that she had left him, and hung himself 10 minutes later. While prisoners generally mistrust and plot against one another, every Thanksgiving I saw men play family for each other, singing songs, telling tales, and making lots of gratuitous physical contact, along with simply feeding one another. All right, and I got one more for you today, and this one's very recent. As a matter of fact, it was actually written just a couple of days ago, and it's titled, "What Thanksgiving Looks Like Behind Bars." For many, the holidays are emotionally tough. For those with strained family relationships, and for those who suffer from drug and alcohol addiction, and for those who are in prison. Quote, "There's a somber mood." Mike Cantrell, a retired corrections officer who worked for the Missouri State Penitentiary and Federal Bureau of Prisons, tells A&E Crime and Investigation. "It's just quiet, almost eerie. If you work in a men's prison, there's always a roar of men's voices in the background, except for the holidays. On Thanksgiving Day, prisons often serve holiday meals to their population, but the fact that prison food is so unappetizing makes the gesture towards a Thanksgiving meal worse. That from Henry Dillard, who was incarcerated from 1995 to 2000. "It feels like a slap in the face," Dillard said. "You get this plastic tray with a scoop of dressing, a slice of manufactured turkey, some gravy, something fruit, and a couple of slices of bread. It would be easier if they just gave us the normal stuff." As an alternative, Dillard said a lot of incarcerated people band together and make their own meals. And you remember we talked about that just a few minutes ago. At the Parnell Correctional Facility in Jackson, Michigan, where Dillard spent the last 5 years of his sentence, that meant getting together in the day room and using the microwave to cook up a meal, often at the crack of dawn, to avoid the bottleneck of others who wanted to use the microwave. Cooking up the meal was a multi-step process, he said. Quote, maybe I've got a friend working in the kitchen who can get us the onion and bell pepper. Those veggies would be microwaved along with chopped up sausage, maybe 20 ramen noodles, refried beans, rice and cheese purchased from the commissary. All of it would be layered into a casserole and served on a cardboard platter and wrapped in a garbage bag that kept the food warm and facilitated easier cleanup. Dillard said they would do it every holiday occasion, but especially on Thanksgiving, because that's when you cook and eat and break bread with your people. Other incarcerated people retreat into themselves on the holidays. That's what Reggie Chapman, with a T, said while he was incarcerated from 1998 to 2022. Chapman, who now works for a nonprofit called the Fortune Society, said that during his Thanksgiving at Coxsackie Correctional Facility in New York, said he was excited to partake in a meal similar to the one that Dillard described. 19 years old and barely 2 months into his sentence, Chapman felt mounting joy as he received ingredients by post from his family and then cooked with other incarcerated individuals. But once the meal was over and his belly was full, the reality of Chapman's imprisonment hit him in a profoundly new way. Quote, this wave of loneliness came over me. This was the first time I recognized the depth of my situation, that I would be doing this for the next 20-something years, he said. It was a gloomy November day. After that year, I never got excited about Thanksgiving anymore. According to Cantrell, prisons will offer extra visitation hours on the holidays, but there are limitations on who gets to visit. Dillard said his darkest holiday seasons were during a multi-year stretch of time he was serving at the Muskegon Correctional Facility in Michigan. Quote, me, my mother, and my brother were all incarcerated at the same time, he said. I'd be by myself the entire time. That made communication among family particularly difficult, Dillard said, because prison-to-prison communication was tightly controlled and costly, and visitation, of course, was impossible. But even after his family members got out of prison, visitation was hard because of the criminal records. Dillard, who today works for The Last Mile, a nonprofit aimed at reducing recidivism and breaking the cycle of incarceration, thinks prisons should do more to ease visitation rights for families like his. Quote, you have a lot of people who are formerly or currently incarcerated who come from generational incarceration, and when people are formerly incarcerated, it's hard for them to come in to see you. But Dillard still remembers his last Thanksgiving, approximately 5 months before his release, when his mother visited. It was their first time together in 25 years. Quote, that visit was crazy. I'd be disappointed by the lack of support I'd received from family during incarceration. But when she came, I was too happy to be mad. She was beautiful, older for sure, but she still reminded me of my mama. And getting that hug, it's different from any hug you can get. And having her arms wrapped around me, sitting across from her in that visiting room, her being unable to take her eyes off me, it made me feel like I was a kid again. She died a year after I came home, he continues, but that one memory wiped away years of pain and anger and grief. Cantrell said the holidays are a time when incarcerated people and guards have a more amicable relationship than usual. Quote, the holidays are a pretty easy shift, he said, adding that because CO's shifts are so long, they often miss their own family meals, and that generates solidarity with the incarcerated. Quote, it's a strange situation. A lot of people that work there and live in there have the same thoughts. And we say that a lot on Bloody Angola, that these correctional officers and people that work for these prisons, it's almost like they're doing time with the prisoners. Dillard said the correctional officers are usually helpful during the holidays. They tend to be more lenient around certain rules. For example, not limiting how many people sit together at a table, while doing a better job enforcing other rules, like making sure calls home are kept to 15 minutes so everyone in line gets to use the phone to call their family. As for Chapman, he's just happy to be out, and to this day, he doesn't like Thanksgiving. Quote, "I've gotten better, but I guess the habit of not celebrating has carried over. There are lasting effects, but he still does celebrate other holidays. I love Halloween," he said. "It's the magic of dressing in a costume." Huh. Imagine that. And you have mobility, the freedom to move around. Plus, it wasn't something we celebrated in prison. And there you have it. Few stories for you. So I've had a lot of people ask me what exactly goes on. If you're curious, Louisiana State Penitentiary in Angola, at least the last time that I checked, they do specialized meals, just like some of the ones I read to you just now in Louisiana State Penitentiary in Angola. So it is something that they try to keep these prisoners' minds occupied with some specialized programs and things of that nature, and a special Thanksgiving meal even behind the wire. I'll see you next week. We'll return to a regular schedule. I'll bring you a more typical story from the United States' most notorious prison. And until next time, I'm Jim Chapman, your host of Bloody Angola, a podcast 142 years in the making, the complete story of America's bloodiest prison. I hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Peace.
I walk a straight line, shackled and chained. Oh, gruesome Gertie is calling my name. There is no mercy in this penitentiary. Just ask the Hill String Gang or Wrangle